Welcome to Charts Today. My name's David Linton, and today's edition from the 21st of November comes to you from London. And we start by looking at the dollar. The dollar has really been the dominating story for the last few weeks, really, ever since the US election. And we've seen this run in the dollar. We see it here on the weekly chart, where we've got several candles just breaking right out, and the dollar breaking higher, breaking these 2014 levels to new highs. So this is really significant. The dollar looks really set to run like it did in 2014. Went sideways for a year and a half, nearly 2 years, and now is breaking again. And we see it here in the daily chart. Really big moves over the last couple of weeks. We do have a down day today, and we're just seeing that showing through on the 60-minute chart, and we shouldn't be really that surprised to see a pullback having run so far. So the big question is, how far will it pull back? But this does really look like the beginning of a new trend. So we're seeing the dollar down very slightly this morning. If we take a look at the euro, the reverse picture is true, where we see here with the euro, we've got basically this recovery that's clicking through here. We're just coming off the bottom, and we're seeing that again in the 60-minute chart. By no means is this anything yet to be thinking that this is a recovery, because we've got these downside targets and we're not through the cloud yet on the 60-minute chart. So we're bearish still on the euro, having a little bit of a better day this morning, up 0.5%, but really this is just a bit of respite before we continue downwards by the look of things. And we do have all these downside targets: 102, 103, 105. So a good anywhere between 1 and 4.5% downside still potential for the euro. We've got a short-term target here to 101 as well. So it's all about dollar strength, euro weakness. The Japanese yen is a very good proxy for watching what the dollar's doing. We see here the big move against the yen, several percent move there just in the last 2 weeks, really phenomenal. And here we see that showing in the 60-minute chart. We've still got targets to 113 yen, so that's another 2.5% upside. 114.70 on this chart, so that's 3.5% upside on the medium term. So it really does look like the dollar yen rate is reversing. Not reversed yet on the long term Ichimoku chart. Remember, this is long term, short term, and medium term and short term here. So the medium term being the charts in the middle. So if we take a look at sterling. Sterling has obviously had a very bad year, but we are just seeing it's had some respite in the last couple of weeks and has recovered with the dollar. It's sort of gone sideways with the dollar. We're seeing that here, so not trending. It's really gone with the dollar, but it is just starting to look like it's falling away again. New short-term downside targets. There's new one emerging now, 120. 07, so that's another 2.5% downside. Not yet activated, but the pressure is on the downside. So it looks like sterling might have a less good week this week. Now, if we look at sterling against the euro, we've seen here sterling was strengthening just coming off this morning, so we're just seeing the euro gathering some strength and sterling some renewed weakness. And if we look at the Swiss, we see here sterling Swiss is pretty flat, just starting to emerge through the cloud, but we do have some short-term upside targets of about 2.5% as well. And against the Aussie dollar, it has had another good run, just coming under some pressure here as well. So looks like less of a good week for sterling. If we take a look at US stock markets, we start with the S&P 500, probably the most important index of all the broad-based top 500 companies. And here we see that we really just cannot break this previous level here. Really significant that we're just really stuck on that level. If we just look at that there, we are just hitting this resistance at around 2190. So the US market just struggling to break out here on the S&P, but we're bullish on the uptrend. We do have upside targets now, 2263, and we are seeing these targets kicking in, 2187. So we've met that target. It's now, can we go to this next target? And we do have these medium-term upside targets, 18, 24%, 27% long-term. So it does look like the US market is going to run in the coming months and year. And if we look at the Nasdaq's had a less good time, but is also through the cloud now. Upside target here of 6% activated, and we just still got to break this 4,900 level to be convincing that we're going to run. So it's just not looking quite as bullish. The Dow making new all-time highs last week. So that is always good from a charting perspective. We see how we ran, and then most of last week actually we just ran sideways, waiting for the next move. 10.5% upside on that short-term chart. That's activated, and we have got 15-20% upside targets on this medium-term chart as well. The real big story actually has been the Russell 2000 index. This is the smaller US companies rocketing. Small US companies really rocketing off that election result. We're seeing that here, a run, and then just slowly just continuing to move upwards. No short-term targets to of note. We've got 8% and 26% medium-term targets. The Russell is where all the action has been, really has been moving. And if we look at the futures this morning in London, just very slightly up on the S&P 500, very slightly down on the Nasdaq. So uncertainty in the market. If we look at FTSE, FTSE is still below the cloud this morning. So on the 60-minute chart here, we're below. We've got downside targets. We're just on support at the moment. We're still bullish on these medium and long-term charts, but really just at the moment waiting to break into that bullish territory. Interesting that the US markets have done that, but Europe just doesn't seem to have managed to do the same. The FTSE 250 broader-based index in the UK, mid caps also just really struggling at the moment. We take a look at the DAX. DAX is through on the cloud, so it is bullish, but we do have an upside target which is also activated, about 10% upside. But we're just really struggling to run as well. Really strong resistance at about this 10,800 level. Just you can see that across the top of this chart here. Really strong resistance, and we've got to break that level to be convinced that we're going to run. Nikkei had another good night overnight. The Asian markets have been pretty strong since the Trump election, and really interesting to see here 13.5% upside target to play for. That big move off that election result where we sold off and then we jumped back, that's created an upside target. That's the thrust that we've got, and the market is just climbing back up there, just through on the price on the cloud, so that's starting to look bullish. Of course, in Japan they watch these things very closely, the Ichimoku charts, so it is looking like Japan is undergoing quite a serious recovery now. Shanghai much the same, up about 0.8%. So looking good there, and if we look at the Hang Seng, not up as much, but and still not quite through the cloud. So one of the less good-looking markets, quite a few downside targets here, but not massive downside targets, and it does look like we're getting ready to turn. India's had a torrid time of recent weeks. Their own monetary policy having a real effect on the charts, and we're into bearish territory on the daily and the 60-minute, so very tough there. And the Australian market has really struggled as well, below on the daily chart and still below on the weekly chart, hitting really serious resistance. And we've got short-term resistance here on this point and figure chart. So Australia is just not looking as good. If we move to commodities, we take a look at Brent. Brent is up quite strongly this morning, up 1.4%. We're back above this $45. We're just really taking this 47 level, so that is looking pretty good. We're still below on the daily cloud and on the weekly, so we still have a bearish picture of the medium long term. It's the time of year where crude does sell off, but we are just seeing a bit of recovery there as well. And if we look at WTI, much the same thing, just clawing back above the cloud. So it is looking a little bit better for crude, but as I say, this time of year we do expect crude to sell off. US nat gas had a nice jump towards the end of the week last week, and that's showing really like a recovery now. And wandering through on this long-term chart, looks like nat gas will have a stronger year next year, having been below the cloud for 2 years on the weekly, but it's just starting to look better here. No real short-term upside targets to play for. You might have to go to the 1-minute chart. Taking a look at just some of the commodities, soybeans up 1%. Running quite nicely there, breaking out, not through yet on the daily, but the long-term support holding here, so that's quite significant. Upside targets of about 1%. No real clear upside potential there. We take a look at wheat, up 0.5%. We got 4% and 1.6% upside targets here. We're through, and the same here, just coming through on the daily, but still bearish on the weekly with lots of downside targets here. So a very mixed picture there. Coffee had a big run in the last few weeks, and if we just take a look at the coffee chart, we see here that we do have this where we're below on the 60-minute now. the daily very strong and the weekly big transition, but we do now have quite big downside targets. A lot of volatility playing through in this market, anywhere between 3, 4, and 11%. So quite a tricky one to watch. Sugar up 1%, so we're seeing that as well. And then if we go to gold. Gold had a pretty terrible time, selling off quite strongly in November. Strong dollar, weak gold, but just starting to emerge through the cloud here and starting to see some small upside targets. So gold might just start to recover. And much the same picture is true of silver, where we see we're just coming through on the cloud as well. So interesting there. Taking a quick look at the US bonds, we're still at this 2.3%. I mean, that's a really significant transition on the weekly cloud. We're through for the first time in a very long time. So it does look like yields are going to go still higher. We do have these upside targets here of 242, 248, 239, 247. So we're seeing 2.5% sort of upside potential to 2.5% yield. And so there's big moves still to be had here. This is probably not over. This is a real seed change in the US rates. Just taking a look at some tech stocks. Apple just starting to come through on the cloud. Tech stocks had a better end to the week last week. Google just not quite through yet. Amazon just starting to wander through on the cloud. Upside target of 7%. Facebook has had a bit of a tough time ever since the results. We've got an upside target of 2.3%. Looks like it's trying to build a base at this 115 level. Microsoft, again, just above the cloud here, and upside potential of 2 to 10%. So keep an eye on these charts. Really interesting. But the really big thing to watch is US stock market breaking this 2200 level is what we really need to see this week. And the dollar, just watch that, because that's having a really big impact on what's happening in markets. That's it for today. Until tomorrow, happy charting. See you then.